It's time for another edition of Boy Green Daily, and this time we go behind enemy lines to learn a little bit more about this week's opponent. It's the Denver Broncos. Let's roll. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
What's poppin', everybody? My name is Paul Liston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for HeavyGashDarn.com, and we're bringing on a spectacular guest. It's Denver Broncos week. Jets and Broncos have been playing a lot lately, so we've grown even closer and closer together. Phil Milani, the team reporter for the friggin' Denver Broncos, joins us on the show right now. What is happening, Phil?
Wow, what's happening, man? I love that introduction. I love it.
Well, I will say it was awesome to finally meet you in person. We've been doing this virtually over the last couple of years. We met at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. A lot of Bronco, DeMarcus Ware going in, Jets going in. It was phenomenal. So it was wonderful to check that off the bucket list there, Phil.
Yeah, that's always a great weekend, but it is so hot in Canton. And then they moved the ceremony to the middle of the day. It was even hotter.
Yeah, I preferred the prime time, the night festivities from a temperature perspective. So I'm not really sure. That's above my pay grade, I suppose, but quite warm, but we powered through. That's just what we do in this business. Phil, let's dive into a couple of interesting factoids. This week, the Denver Broncos, in a surprising move to a lot of people, cut bait on Randy Gregory, this Dallas Cowboys stud. I loved him with the Dallas Cowboys. Said, "Oh, what a phenomenal move by the Broncos, this pass rushing specialist." But for whatever reason, obviously, it didn't work out. What didn't happen here with Gregory that Denver was hoping?
You know, like when they first brought him in, it was like how you were describing it. Everybody was so excited about what kind of production he was going to be able to bring here, but it just never quite materialized. Last year, his first year here, a lot of injury problems. The entire season didn't go the way anybody had hoped for. And then the start here to his second season, Nick Bonito, the Broncos' first pick from 2 years ago, he started last week ahead of Randy Gregory, had a big game, forced a huge fumble that was returned for a touchdown for the Broncos. So I think they started to like the production from some of these younger guys. Jonathan Cooper is on the other side. Those are the two Broncos' big pass rushers right now. And, just trying to see how Randy Gregory was going to fit into the mix here. He just wasn't quite doing enough, I guess, for this Broncos coaching staff. So they decided to part ways. But yeah, I guess I agree with you. Bit of a surprising move, but he just hadn't been playing as much or getting the production either so far through 4 games for the Broncos.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that the Jets and Broncos, we were talking about this before we started hopping on to record this, is that, the Jets and Broncos have played every year over the last 3 years. This will be the 4th year in a row that the Jets and Broncos have played, which is kind of, again, a weird scheduling quirk. But, again, it's based on where you finish to where the division you're playing finishes and all this other jazz. So it just so randomly happened. And when I look at the history of these games, right, we have the Jets-Broncos game last year, 16-9. That was a close one to the end. Then you guys beat us with a rusty wrench, 26-0. That was a bloodbath. And then the 37-28 game. But the consistency, at least from my perspective of the Broncos, was like, holy crap, this Broncos defense is suffocating. And they have all these crazy playmakers at different levels. But obviously, for whatever reason, that hasn't translated this year. Have you been able to pinpoint why? Because, the Orange Crush defense, they used to cause a lot of problems.
Really, all the way back to the no-fly zone in 2015 when the Broncos won the Super Bowl, the defense has been the strength of this organization for at least the last 10 years. And, with Sean Payton coming in this year, I think that people are expecting the offense to improve, and that has certainly happened under his play calling. And Russell Wilson, it certainly looks like Russell Wilson again. But for this Broncos team, the issues have been on the other side of the ball primarily. And, there's been Justin Simmons, the Broncos all-pro safety. He's been battling a groin injury. He's missed the last couple of games. And really that has caused a lot of miscommunication in the secondary. And for this Broncos team, like the way they've just been trying to fit some of these gaps, it just hasn't gone according to plan. And when you look at the statistics, all of them are a little bit skewed now after that 70-point game against Miami a couple of weeks ago. There's no climbing back from that in terms of like points per game, rushing yards. I think that the Dolphins rushed for like 350 yards against the Broncos. So like, just like statistically trying to climb out of that hole, no matter what you do, you're going to be, in the bottom 10 of the league pretty much from here on out. But yeah, I would say injuries, the first game of the year, Caden Stearns, a young safety, the Broncos were going to be playing a lot back there. He goes down, he's out for the season. So all of a sudden now your two main safeties have missed a good chunk of these first 4 games here for the Broncos. And then that sort of had a trickle-down effect all across the defense here. And, yeah, it's something that the Broncos have been harping on. They know that if they want to win games, they're going to have to play better on that side of the ball. Last week in that first half, I mean, Justin Fields looked like a legit like superstar quarterback. He had only 1 incompletion in that first half last week, and it was a Hail Mary as time expired before heading into the locker room. So they know they got to be better on that side of the ball. And it has been a little bit puzzling because last year they were so good there. And then all of a sudden now Vance Joseph is back. So a lot of like finger pointing has gone on there. But I don't think it's something as simple as like, hey, there's a different defensive coordinator here. That is not the case. There's been a lot of injuries. They've been relying on a lot of young guys to play in some new positions here. So it's been a mix of a lot of different things here, but I think injuries are the biggest factor.
Phil, I wasn't going to bring it up, but you brought it up. So I guess you've introduced it here with that 70 burger that the Miami Dolphins.
I mean, that's like sort of burned into my brain a little bit.
Yeah, I have to ask you because, like, as a competitor and a former football player back in my day, I preferred of the 2 ways that you could lose a game, either a nail biter at the end or you just get your teeth kicked down your throat. As a competitor, and this may sound weird, I always wanted my teeth kicked down my throat because in that sense, when we went to film room the next day, there's not one play I could point to. There's a lot of plays I could point to that all fell apart of why we lost in the fashion. When it's that close, you're like, if we just one of these, it's just so frustrating. So I the Broncos get like, are you in a sense of disbelief as it's happening? Is there like, they do those fighting scenes in movies where, your body's just kind of getting beat up, your spirit just kind of leaves your body and it's just looking down at what's happening? Like, walk us through that. Obviously it's historical. What occurred a couple.
It's interesting because in the first half, there were a couple of plays on the offensive side of the ball where the Broncos scored touchdowns, but they were called back on penalties. And so sort of heading into the locker room, you're like, this isn't going well, but, a couple of plays here or there on the offensive side, and this game's a lot closer than it actually is. That was sort of the belief at halftime, but then obviously in the second half, it just kept going and going and going. And it was sort of a perfect storm, I think, like the combination of Miami's extreme speed. That is like a track team there. Devon A-Chain, Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle didn't even play in that game. So the speed that they had, plus the combination of the Broncos youth, a rookie inside linebacker was playing a lot in that game because Josie Jewell went down. Justin Simmons wasn't playing in that game. And so the combination of those two things, it was just it equaled a disaster for the Broncos. And it was interesting because it was in contrast to just what you were just talking about, because the first 2 weeks, the Broncos lose by 1 point to the Raiders and then 2 points to the Commanders. So they're 0-2 heading into that game, but they only have lost by a combined 3 points. So you feel like this team maybe is closer than people think. Then the 70 points happens. And then last week, the Broncos were down 28-7 with 14 seconds left in the third quarter. All of a sudden, some magic starts happening. They start to get some momentum, and then they get it together, end up coming from behind, scored 24 unanswered against Chicago. So I think the belief around here is that, hey, maybe they got something going here after a comeback like that against Chicago, and they're hoping that that carries on this week against the Jets.
Again, we're speaking with Phil Milani, the gosh darn Denver Broncos team reporter here on the program. And since we're talking about defense real quick, Phil, you can be honest with me here. It's just me and you. There's no one else watching. There's no one else listening. It's just me and you. Best cornerback in the NFL, Sauce Gardner, Patrick Surtain.
I'm going PS2, man. I'm biased, obviously, but I do think I know that those are the two guys, though. Really, man.
Of course.
I do think that those two are the very top. Every time one of these new lists comes out, some wide receiver put out something, some other cornerback put out something. It's coming down to those two guys. And, I think with Pat, when you look at him on the field, it's really rare. His size and the speed and like fluidity that he plays with. I don't think that I've really seen a player who moves the way he does at his size. I mean, it's really rare. And, a couple of years ago, we did this story with him where we went back to his hometown. He's from South Florida there. We went to his house, and he was giving us a tour of his house. This is his childhood home, and there's just like trophies everywhere, like from high school, all these track trophies. They're just like sort of all over. Like next to the TV was his SEC Defensive Player of the Year trophy from when he was at Alabama. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's that. This one. That's this one. And I'm like, man, this guy has been the real deal his entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, so far in his young career, he's been as advertised for the Broncos. And, of course, Sauce is amazing, too. And he's going to give, Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy a tough day coming up on Sunday. So it's going to be fun to see those two both out on the field together. I think I love Sauce's he's kind of like what you think of when you're talking about a top cornerback. Like he's got that moxie. He's got that sort of trash talking. Pat is not like that. He's very quiet, and he just kind of goes about his business. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Champ Bailey in that regard, where he just kind of shows up and does his work. You know what I mean? But then on the other side of it, you got like Sauce, who's kind of got like a little bit of that Dion quality, where you love the flash and the showmanship. So both guys, obviously, a lot of fun to watch.
And to your point, a million ways to skin a cat. The commonality between Primetime and Old Champ, both Pro Football Hall of Famers. So you could get there a lot of different ways. And, I can't wait for that one, Phil. Like when we're both old. Sauce Gardner and Pat going in. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Phil. I remember a bunch of years ago. That was a good one. Look at these guys back in. Because it looks like they're on that kind of trajectory, which is spectacular to have these kind of young players in that. Let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. Russell Wilson, to your point, like when the trade happened, it was this blockbuster quarterback acquisition for a variety of reasons. Obviously, it doesn't go according to plan, but when I look at statistically here for Russell, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, 106 QBR, 67% completion percentage. Is Russ back?
Yeah, he is the guy that the Broncos thought that they were trading for. He's been really, really impressive this year. I think last year it was a combination of a couple of things. Obviously Nathaniel Hackett was the head coach here. He was sort of finding his way the whole season, I think. And then for Russell Wilson, personally, I think he let the pressure really get to him a little bit. Just after the trade, everybody thought, okay, they found their guy. And I think there was just a lot of pressure here on him to come out and just put up insane numbers, and instead of just sort of being the efficient quarterback who makes the plays, who does what he's supposed to do out there and just sort of let the game come to him. He was just under so much pressure last year. Now with Sean Payton here, the culture has changed significantly here, a lot less hype, going into this season. And it did feel like Russ was just another one of the guys out there instead of a year prior. It was like, oh my God, there's number 3, Russell Wilson. He's out there, So I think now he's able to just sort of settle in, just do the things that comes naturally to him. And he took it to heart, I think, this offseason too. Really came back in tremendous shape, had lost like 15 pounds, something like that this offseason. And you could see it out there. He's moving around better. He's able to scramble and extend plays. And that classic Russell Wilson deep ball is certainly a big part of this Broncos offense because he's been letting it rip down the field a lot. And that's making defenses be honest. And I do think that Sean Payton is one of the better play callers in this game. So he's been able to scheme some things where guys have been open a lot more this year. And Russell Wilson's been taking advantage. I think in addition to the stats you mentioned, his QB rating, I think, is 3rd highest in the NFL. So he is back, and he's the guy the Broncos thought they were getting.
Phil, you mentioned just a few moments ago in your answer, there's they kind of wiped away all the hype. I heard the people in Denver there don't like all the hype, that may be around other places. I heard Sean Payton may have mentioned that about the Hard Knocks and the Jets and all that going on. Very interesting. Yes.
He did mention that, but I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed Hard Knocks this year. I thought that they did a great job, and I think that everybody came off really well. Of course, they find the underdog guys, and then both of them end up making the team, and I just thought it was great, and I really liked seeing all the personalities with the Jets this year, and I thought that was a lot of fun.
Well, speaking of the underdog guys, I'm going to be honest, Phil. Whenever I think of the Broncos, I think of all the spectacular receivers. And again, the love is sent out to Tim Patrick, who's such a stud. I love Tim Patrick, and it's unfortunate with the injuries. But you think about some of the other guys, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I'm like, yeah, baby. Look at these guys. And you look at the stats. Marvin Mims. Who the heck? He's leading the team in receiving, and he has these explosive plays. When you look at some of the deeper analytics with those chunk plays he's able to create with less opportunities. Really impressive young man. He seemingly has come out of nowhere here as a rookie.
When the Broncos drafted him, Sean Payton was asked about, hey, what's this guy's speed like? What do you see on the film? And he was like, it's like when you're driving on the freeway on the weekends. There's no traffic out there and things are a little more open. He was like, for a lot of guys coming in, it's like Monday through Friday. But for Mims, it's like you're driving on the weekend. And that soundbite has certainly stuck around here. But it has proven to be true because this guy's got the home run ability. His speed, is he's got that extra gear where he's able to create a little bit of separation there right before he catches the ball. Against Washington, he had a 60-plus yard touchdown that he took to the house. He's a factor in the return game, too. Had a return against Miami, 101 yards that he took back for a touchdown. So this guy's a playmaker. And when you talk to him in the locker room, super mature kid coming out of Oklahoma. He's another guy kind of like PS2 that he's won at every level. He was all-state Texas, coming out of high school. So he was a big deal coming out. He's a big deal at Oklahoma. And, somehow he fell to the second round this year. The Broncos decided to trade up and take him. And, he's been as advertised so far here through 4 games and gives the Broncos sort of you don't want to compare him to a guy like Tyreek Hill just because Hill's otherworldly, but he's kind of got some of those elements to his game where, maybe you can use him as a decoy here or there. You bring him and you line him up in the backfield a little bit, or, you could just use him in a lot of different ways. And he certainly has that speed. So, I'm excited to see how this young man's game is going to continue to grow. And I think he could be a special kind of a guy here in a year or two.
Well, a couple of quickies before we get you out of here, Phil. First off, I mentioned the matchups over the last 3 years that the Jets and Broncos have had. And if we consider this one coming up, the Jets and Broncos matchups, the Jets facing the Broncos, there will have been 3 different sets of coaching staffs that have been apart over the last 3. So is there anything we can pull from those because of all the differences? Is there anything you could look back at those games and pull anything as we try to project and guess and chat about what this game could be like on Sunday. Is there anything we could take from those previous
I
games, or
don't
do you have
think
to
so.
throw all
I mean,
those
because
out?
I think for the Broncos, Brett Rippon started the last two. I
That's
think
right.
so. Like that's just like such a totally different type of ball
Yeah.
game when your backup has to come in and the game plan sort of adjusts all around him. So I'm not sure how much to take away from it. When I think about the matchup, I really think from the Broncos' perspective, the Jets' defensive line, really their entire front seven, so talented. You saw what he was able to do, what that unit was able to do against Patrick Mahomes last week. I mean, if it's not for a couple of questionable calls there, who knows how that game ends? Those certainly were brutal for the Jets. So, I mean, that front seven is going to be a problem. I imagine that Russ is going to have to be scrambling around a lot this week. So that's sort of what I think about when I think. And then obviously Sauce is out there. I know last year Sauce primarily lined up against Cortland Sutton and kind of took him out of the game, but the Broncos were able to find a lot of success with Jerry Jeudy. I think he had like 97 yards in that matchup last year. So I'm interested to see if they do that same sort of tactic this time around. And then on the other side of the ball, the Broncos are going to have to figure out a way to stop this Jets rushing attack. Breece Hall sort of returning to the scene of the crime, I know, from last year.
Yes.
So he might be, extra motivated and considering what the Broncos have done facing running backs the last 3 weeks, that's a major concern, I think. So stopping the run for the Broncos and, trying to contain that front seven on the other side, I think those are the two big things.
And Phil, to wrap up here, Robert Saleh refused to dabble when he spoke to the media on Wednesday when they said, bulletin board material, a little extra juice, perhaps. He said, absolutely not. We don't talk about those sort of things. He gave all the politically correct answers, but I'm going to ask you, Phil, because exactly. Can we dabble? Is there some juice? Is this personal? It's a random week 5 game, but is there a little extra sizzle to this game coming up on Sunday, do you think?
I think that the only thing to it is just Nathaniel Hackett just coming back. I mean, that's just the former head coach. Comments aside, whatever. I think that you just look at that and then you say, hey, that's sort of an interesting deal, him coming back and facing the team he coached last year. That's certainly noteworthy no matter when it happens or whatever else happens. And, with Sean Payton, I think that, I think he was more trying to just stand up for Russ and give Russ a little bit of confidence there, I know that several weeks ago he talked about those comments and said, hey, maybe I shouldn't have said that. He has not addressed those comments this week. So, I'm not sure how he's feeling about it now, but certainly something that the Broncos have moved on from, and just excited to see what Nathaniel Hackett looks like. And certainly everybody here wishes Nathaniel well, maybe just not this week.
Fair enough. I appreciate the honesty there. That's phenomenal. Phil, I told you before we start recording, and now as we're doing this live here on the show, that I love these Jets-Broncos matchups every year because we get to keep chatting every gosh darn year about these games, and that's a lot of fun. So, Phil, thanks for taking the time, and I was going to say good luck. I don't really mean it, but I guess I'll say it to say it. Good luck, of course, on Sunday. Hopefully we get a great game for both of us.
Same, Paul. Thank you for always having me on here. It's always a pleasure from this side, and right back to you. Best of luck the rest of the way this season. Heartbreaking news about Aaron Rodgers. I think everybody felt for the Jets there, but good luck the rest of the way after Sunday.
Yeah, fair enough. That's very accurate. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on the